This is Harry Davies for the Mirror Fighting, joined by Dan Hardy after a weekend of entertaining fights for the PFL, previewing the next up and coming fights in Paris. So Dan, I'll start as we just mentioned off camera there. It was a historic weekend for Saudi Arabia and for the PFL. What did you make of the event as a whole?
Man, it was awesome. I went out there not really knowing what to expect. Of course, I was out there for the Ngannou Fury fight, which was something quite special. So I was expecting big things, and I wasn't disappointed. The setup that we had, and the walkout, the stage, and the screens and everything was incredible. And then the fights as well. Like we had champions versus champions over 15 minutes, which set a real high pace for these guys. And we had some fantastic fights. Of course, the main event is the one that stands out, partly because it was so fast and so impressive, but also because it lines up an opponent for Ngannou when he returns to mixed martial arts. And I think everybody can be excited about Renan Ferreira right now. He's the new face in the heavyweight division. He's certainly got John Jones's vote. I will say that straight away after the fight, Jones said that he's too fast for Ngannou. So we'll see how that pans out. But yeah, just a big night all round, and I think we've set a precedent that we're gonna surpass every year we go back out to KSA.
Something people were saying is obviously PFL would have hoped more of their champions would have won, but obviously like you said, the most sort of important one they were gunning on was the Ferreira on it, and he did it in impressive fashion. Do you think it matters that PFL maybe didn't get all the results they wanted? Because I remember Don Davis said during the week he was like, "Look, we just want the best fighting the best," and when that happens, you get results like this, right?
Yeah, I don't think it mattered at all, honestly. What I think it does is it proves how good the Bellator fighters are. We like Jason Jackson looked incredible. It was unfortunate that he didn't get to fight Magomed Karamov. I think that would have been, potentially a more formidable test. Even though Ray Cooper's got a win over Magomed Karamov, stylistically, I think that would have been a real fascinating one. But like you look at, Impa Kasanganay, I think he's realized after this week that he's a natural 205er. Like he fought for 25 minutes against Josh Silveira and didn't break a sweat, didn't breathe out of his mouth the whole time. Johnny Eblen in 15 minutes. Of course, Kasangane nearly put him out in the second round, but the durability of Eblen was able to get to him and wear him down. And I've never seen Kasangane tired like he was in that third round. I have to assume it was fatigue because normally he would be working a lot harder than that. So I think, Eblen came through a really tough test in that second round, but I think the longer the fight went, the more it would look like Eblen's fight. I think Eblen is still, got to be considered one of the best middleweights on the planet right now. And I think Impa Kasanganay, back up at light heavyweight is a handful for anybody. Um, for me, they're all fighters, right? Bellator, PFL, it doesn't really matter who they are, where they come from. Fighters against fighters. I want to see the best against the best. And what stood out to me was the level of the fighters, the level of Renan Ferreira, the level of Vadim Nemkov moving up to heavyweight, lethal individual. I think it sets a standard for the PFL fighters to raise their game to this year around. And I think when the rosters are announced for the PFL regular season, and we're going to see some Bellator fighters mixed into those rosters, that's really going to raise the level across the board for PFL. And ultimately, two organizations coming together, that's what we're trying to do. We're just trying to improve the quality of our mixed martial arts and our fighters. And I think the event of the weekend proved that we've done that.
I have to mention the main event because obviously Ferrer did it in such impressive style, and the sort of general fan would be no disrespect to Bader, but obviously he's at the latter end of his career, probably more of an awkward style for Ngannou, probably try grind and wrestle him down, whereas you have someone in Ferrer who is actually gonna tower over Ngannou, which is quite, amazing. But obviously nothing really could have gone better for PFL in that main event because as you mentioned with Jones was sort of taken back by Ferrer. They've almost got a new star in their hands, especially after he won the million last year.
Yeah, exactly this, and this is what's nice about this new format with the Super Champs cards, because Renan Ferreira would have been back in the mix in April, right? He would have been back as a contender for the 2025 title 2024 title in this year. And that would have been good. It would have kind of validated him as a champion again, of course, but to be able to beat Ryan Bader, like aside from the Ngannou fight being on the table and everything else, like Ryan Bader's a veteran of the game. He's familiar to fans from when he came over from the UFC. He went into Bellator. He won 2 titles in Bellator. He's just, you know, slightly undersized for this weight class, and I think we saw that when he faced off against Tenen Ferreira. The question, of course, is skills pay the bills, and if Bader was able to get into the floor, does Ferreira have the ground game to be able to match up with Bader? But now he's at American Top Team. What we're seeing out of him, we're not necessarily seeing those grappling skills. What we're seeing is a confidence in his striking that shows that if he does get taken down, he's not going to be as concerned. Like we saw what he did against Goltsov, right? He didn't win the first round against Goltsov. He was able to keep it together, survive on the floor, and put him down in the next round. Like you don't have to be an expert in every range as a heavyweight. You have to be better than your opponent in the range that you beat them. And Bader wasn't able to get close to him. Now, is Ngannou going to come out and wrestle Ferreira? If he does, that's most likely going to give Ferreira another 6 months' time to prepare his grappling skills for what Ngannou may bring to the table. But the reality is he's taller, he's got a longer reach, he's faster than Ngannou. He might not be able to punch as hard pound for pound, but he's certainly got enough power to put any heavyweight on the planet on the canvas. For me, this is the most fascinating fight in all of mixed martial arts heavyweights at the moment. Aside from, of course, if we can get Jones in there against Ngannou, that would be the biggest fight that anybody could make. But I think Ferreira's become a real star after this weekend, and I think the more we see him in there, the more people are going to realize that he may be the guy to beat.
Obviously, I mentioned the PFL Paris card a week today. I will get to that in a moment, but before a day after that, we've got Ngannou's return, right? And a lot of people have sort of said, well, this Ferreira has announced his next opponent, but when will it be? Do you think the result of his fight with Joshua will determine whether he makes his MMA return this year? I know there's talks of December, and you might be there sooner if the Joshua fight doesn't go to plan. What do you sort of think? Do you think it matters, the result of his fight with AJ?
I mean, I do think it's important. Depending on what happens with that fight, would determine the flexibility of Ngannou's future. We could say. I mean, the reality is no matter what happens in the AJ fight, we're going to see Tyson against Usyk twice, aren't we? Right? We're gonna need to see an immediate rematch, regardless of what happens, because they're gonna want to be certain that the right person's got the belt. So that's gonna give Ngannou some time, right? It's gonna give him, like, say for example, he beats AJ next week, and then he's got 6 months time between now and his potential date with the undisputed. Myself as Ngannou, I would rather be doing something in that time than sitting waiting. And there's no reason why he couldn't turn his attention back to mixed martial arts for 2 or 3 months and show us those boxing skills in the small gloves, and potentially reaffirm himself as the best heavyweight on the planet with one fight. If he's able to beat Ferreira and do it impressively, then no one's really going to be arguing whether he's the best heavyweight on the planet, in my opinion. I don't feel like. I feel like the only other option, as we said, is John Jones, and I don't know as that fight's ever going to happen. And the longer it takes to make, the less people are going to be invested in the idea of John Jones being able to win that fight. I mean, it's all up in the air right now. But I do feel like we're going to see Ngannou in the smart cage this year, in the second half of the year for sure. But I think we're going to see him in the small gloves this year, and I wouldn't be surprised if he goes back to the big gloves afterwards and potentially fights for an undisputed boxing title.
Something Francis has said in the lead up to his upcoming fight is, look, if I hit AJ with the same punch that dropped Fury, I don't think he's getting up from that. So I'll ask you, we all know Francis can knock anyone out, but do you think he can stop AJ? And if he does, how does he do it?
I absolutely think he can stop AJ. He's lost the surprise element that he had in the Tyson Fury fight. AJ is going to watch that fight and studied it, or at least his camp will. They'll know what they're dealing with in Ngannou, and they'll have a lot of respect for what he brings to the table. I also have to consider that Ngannou is going to be more confident than he was in the Fury fight, though. Like he said himself, there were doubts in the first round whether he had 10 rounds in the tank, so he was a bit tentative. I think now he knows that he's going to be a bit more of a bully in this fight. I think he's going to push AJ a bit more. And the reality is, look, like if he catches AJ with that exact same punch that he put Fury down with, AJ might get back up off the canvas, right? He might get back up and he might move around for the rest of the fight, but he might not be as confident or as willing to engage as Fury was. Like Fury kind of looked over at his corner like, would you look at that? He's put me on the canvas. AJ's look over to his corner is going to be a, oh my goodness, guys, the worst is happening. That's kind of, you know what I mean? I don't know as AJ's got the same kind of ability to regroup mentally if he hits the canvas like Fury did. Like Fury's got, no one's going to undermine that guy's mental fortitude. I don't know as I can say the same thing about AJ. And I feel like if he locks up with Ngannou and feels his strength, if he takes a couple of shots and he's either rocked or he's put on the canvas, there's an unraveling that goes on in AJ's mind that doesn't necessarily happen in Fury's mind, and I think that might be the losing factor for him. It's not the technical ability to beat Ngannou. It's not the athletic ability to hang with him, or even the punching power. It's his ability to believe that he's going to win the fight if it starts to go south. That's where I think he struggles the most.
Just before I go to the Paris card, you've had your fair share of cuts during your accomplished career. Obviously, I mentioned Fury. This fight is coming up in May, but everyone says, oh, a cut of that size, you'd want longer to recover, surely. Do you think it plays a part in that reschedule fight, and how do you see that one going?
I think it does. I think it does, especially given the fact that it's not going to be this is not going to be a fight where Fury is going to come in and crack somebody on the chin and put them away. Usyk is too tricky. He's too fast. And his fight IQ is way too high. And Usyk has got the presence in those pocket situations to be able to target that cut, that scar. Like that for me would be an obvious target. I would be working that all the way through with my jab, with my lead hook. I'd be trying to soften that up all the way through, which if nothing else, it preoccupies Tyson Fury to defend himself on one side more than the other. And these are all things that are going to leave him vulnerable to Usyk. I would much rather see Fury completely fully healed and not have a date in mind in the future before he starts thinking about getting back in there, because like that's not a new cut, right? That's old scar tissue that's been opened up again. The more scar tissue opens and reopens, the more vulnerable it becomes. I would rather see him really get that properly healed. A small cut can be stitched up and healed in 2 to 4 weeks, but the stakes are too high in this one, I think.
And obviously,
sorry.
that's right. Thursday, March 7th, the return of arguably one of the biggest stars in the whole of MMA, right? I know Jason Jackson calls him Cedric Dummy, but Cedric Doumbé is back against Baki, one of his probably toughest challengers today. I know Baki thinks he's going to get the upset, but it's a great card. I'll start with the main event. What are your sort of thoughts? Is this maybe too tough of a challenge for Doumbé, or what do you think?
I mean, that's what we're going to find out, isn't it? I think this is why the tickets went so quickly, because like people saw what he did to Zebo in September. And I think if we'd have matched him up against an opponent where people would have felt the same thing was going to happen, we wouldn't have had this kind of engagement. Like the fact that Doumbé has selected Baki as the opponent, like he was the one that he went after before any conversations between Baki and the PFL had happened about this potential matchup. Doumbé had already made his mind up that that was the guy. And he chose this guy because he's undefeated, because he's a wrestler, because he presents all of the things that people are going to think are problematic for Doumbé. That, in my opinion, deserves a great amount of respect, because there are a lot of fighters in his position that would take easier fights, a more comfortable win, 15,000 fans, like let's get another win on his record and let's gather some sponsorship money, etc., and keep that momentum going. He's not looking for shortcuts. Like the fact that he chose Baki as an opponent shows you that he's trying to prove a lot in one fight straight away. Like he did Zebo 9 seconds. If he can do Baki in the first round, he can call anybody on the planet out and no one's going to question his grappling skills. Jason Jackson, as you said, called him out. That for me is a really, really interesting fight. But Jason Jackson can wrestle. And if Doumbé gets taken down by Baki and beaten up on the floor, then Jason Jackson's going to be rubbing his hands together thinking this is easy money. Doumbé doesn't want to show himself in any kind of way where there's a weakness in his game. And this is not the kind of fighter that you choose if that's your goal. It shows you where his confidence is at. It shows you that he feels like he can beat anybody right now. Not in 12 months' time when he's had 3 more fights, or let's get a middle of the road grappler and see how we deal with that guy first. Like he's gone for the top of the tree. Like he's got Chimaev in his corner. Like I mean, it's a very, very stiff test for Doumbé. But as a fan, I just sit back and go, all right, dude, you think that's the right fight for you? Let's make that fight happen, because I want to see it and you guys want to see it. And 15,000 people in the arena have paid like tickets, I mean, what we have 10 minutes before the tickets were sold out. Like people are anticipating a big night, and Doumbé is the one that set out the stand and made these promises. So he's the one that's now got to deliver. And Baki, all he has to do is be the spoiler, which I would much rather play that role if I'm Baki, to be honest. Less pressure on my shoulders for sure.